If you should ever turn your will to things outside your control in order to impress someone, be sure that you have wrecked your whole purpose in life. Be content, then, to be a philosopher in all that you do. And if you wish also to be seen as one, show yourself first that you are, and you will succeed. Epictetus, Enchiridion, 23. Is there anything sadder than the immense lengths we'll go to impress someone? The things we'll do to earn someone's approval can seem, when examined in retrospect, like the result of some temporary form of insanity. Suddenly, we're wearing uncomfortable, ridiculous clothes we've been told are cool, eating differently, talking differently, eagerly waiting for a call or text. If we did these things because we liked it, that would be one thing. But that's not what it is. It's just a means to an end, to get someone to give us the nod. The irony, as Marcus Aurelius points out repeatedly, is that the people whose opinion we covet are not all that great. They're flawed. They're distracted and wowed by all sorts of silly things themselves. We know this, and yet we don't want to think about it. To quote Fight Club again, we buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like. Doesn't that sound pretty ridiculous? But more than that, isn't it about as far as possible as you can get from the serenity and security that philosophy can provide? The psychology of approval. The need for approval is deeply ingrained in human psychology. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek validation from our parents, teachers, and peers. This desire for approval follows us into adulthood, influencing our decisions and behavior. Social psychologist Abraham Maslow placed this need in the middle of his hierarchy of needs under the category of esteem needs, which includes respect from others and self-esteem. When we go out of our way to impress others, we often do so because we believe it will lead to acceptance, admiration, or love. However, this pursuit can be a double-edged sword. While it might bring short-term satisfaction, it often leaves us feeling empty and disconnected from our true selves. The temporary insanity of approval seeking. Think back to a time when you did something solely to impress someone else. Maybe you bought an expensive gadget, wore an outfit that wasn't your style, or pretended to like a hobby that you had no interest in. In those moments, you likely felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. But once the novelty wore off, you were left with a lingering sense of discomfort and dissonance. This phenomenon is what philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre referred to as bad faith. Bad faith occurs when we deceive ourselves into thinking we are acting authentically, when in reality, we are conforming to external expectations. By seeking approval, we are not living true to our own values and desires, but rather to the perceived expectations of others. The fallibility of others' opinions. It's crucial to recognize the fallibility of those whose opinions we seek. The people whose validation we crave are often as insecure and uncertain as we are. They are influenced by their own biases, fears, and misconceptions. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, reminds us that the opinions of others are fleeting and unreliable. He advises focusing on our own actions and virtues rather than the shifting judgments of others. The Stoic approach to approval. Stoicism, a school of philosophy founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BC, teaches that we should focus on what is within our control and accept what is not. This principle is central to maintaining inner peace and resilience. According to Stoicism, seeking approval from others is futile because it places our happiness and self-worth in the hands of external forces. Epictetus, a prominent Stoic philosopher, emphasizes the importance of self-reliance and inner strength. In his Enchiridion, he advises us to be content with being philosophers in our actions and to show ourselves, rather than others, that we are living according to our principles. By doing so, we cultivate a sense of integrity and authenticity that does not depend on external validation. The true source of fulfillment. True fulfillment comes from living in accordance with our values and principles. When we act authentically, we experience a sense of coherence and alignment between our actions and our inner beliefs. This inner harmony is the foundation of lasting contentment and peace. Philosopher and psychologist William James once said, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. By choosing thoughts and actions that reflect our true selves, we liberate ourselves from the constant pressure to conform and impress." Breaking free from the approval trap. Breaking free from the cycle of approval seeking requires self-awareness and a commitment to authenticity. Here are some steps to help you shift your focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. 1. Reflect on your motivations. Take time to reflect on why you seek approval from certain people. Are you trying to fill a void or gain acceptance? Understanding your motivations can help you identify areas where you can make changes. 2. Set personal goals. Define what success and fulfillment mean to you, independent of others' opinions. Setting personal goals that align with your values will give you a sense of direction and purpose. 3. Practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself and recognize that seeking approval is a common human experience. Instead of criticizing yourself for past behaviors, focus on how you can grow and improve. 4. Cultivate inner validation. Develop a habit of self-validation by acknowledging your accomplishments and strengths. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small, and remind yourself that your worth is not determined by others' opinions. 5. Surround yourself with supportive people. Seek out relationships with people who appreciate and respect you for who you are. Surrounding yourself with positive influences can reinforce your commitment to authenticity. 6. Embrace imperfection. Accept that you are not perfect and that it is okay to make mistakes. Embracing your imperfections can free you from the need to constantly prove yourself to others. The paradox of approval. There is a paradox inherent in the pursuit of approval. The more we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. When we base our self-worth on external validation, we become dependent on the ever-changing opinions of others. This dependency creates a cycle of anxiety and insecurity. Conversely, when we shift our focus to internal validation and self-acceptance, we often find that others are drawn to our authenticity and confidence. By being true to ourselves, we naturally attract people who resonate with our values and appreciate us for who we are. Living authentically. Living authentically means embracing who you are and expressing yourself honestly. It requires courage to stand by your principles and make choices that reflect your true self. Authenticity is not about being perfect. It's about being real and genuine. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote about the concept of the crowd and the dangers of losing oneself in the collective opinions of society. He argued that true individuality and freedom come from breaking away from the crowd and living in accordance with one's own beliefs and values. The rewards of authenticity. The rewards of living authentically are profound. When you align your actions with your values, you experience a sense of fulfillment and purpose. You build deeper, more meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. You also develop resilience and inner strength, as your self-worth is no longer tied to the fluctuating opinions of others. Moreover, authenticity fosters creativity and innovation. When you are true to yourself, you are more likely to think independently and pursue your passions. This creative freedom can lead to personal and professional growth as you explore new ideas and opportunities. Conclusion. In a world that often emphasizes external success and approval, it can be challenging to stay true to oneself. However, the wisdom of philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius reminds us that true fulfillment comes from within. By focusing on our own actions, values, and principles, we can cultivate a sense of authenticity and inner peace that is not dependent on external validation. Remember, the people whose approval you seek are not infallible. They have their own flaws and insecurities. Instead of striving to impress others, strive to impress yourself. Live authentically, embrace your true self, and find contentment in the knowledge that you are living according to your principles. This is the path to lasting fulfillment and serenity. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Above all, it is necessary for a person to have a true self-estimate, for we commonly think we can do more than we really can. Seneca, on Tranquility of Mind 5.2. Most people resist the idea of a true self-estimate, probably because they fear it might mean downgrading some of their beliefs about who they are and what they're capable of. As Goethe's maxim goes, it is a great failing to see yourself as more than you are. How could you real like insidered self-aware, if you refuse to consider your weaknesses. Don't fear self-assessment because you're worried you might have to admit some things about yourself. The second half of Goethe's maxim is important, too. He states that it is equally damaging to value yourself at less than your true worth. Is it not equally common to surprised at how well we're able to handle a previously feared scenario? The way that we're able to put aside the grief for a loved one and care for others, though we always thought we'd be wrecked if something were to happen to our parents or a sibling. The way we're able to rise to the occasion in a stressful situation or a life-changing opportunity. We underestimate our capabilities just as much and just as dangerously as we overestimate other abilities. Cultivate the ability to judge yourself accurately and honestly. Look inward, discern what you are capable of and what it will take to unlock that potential ... Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Another has done me wrong. Let him see to it. He has his own tendencies and his own affairs. What I have now is what the common nature has willed, and what I endeavor to accomplish now is what my nature wills. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 5.5. Abraham Lincoln occasionally got fuming mad with a subordinate, one of his generals, even a friend. Rather than taking it out on that person directly, he'd write a long letter outlining his case, why they were wrong, and what he wanted them to know. Then Lincoln would fold it up, put the letter in the desk drawer, and never send it. Many of these letters survive only by chance. He knew, as the former emperor of Rome knew, that it's easy to fight back. It's tempting to give them a piece of your mind that you almost always end up with regret. You almost always wish you hadn't sent the letter. Think of the last time you flew off the handle. What was the outcome? Was there any benefit? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. The unrestricted person, who has in hand what they will in all events, is free. But anyone who can be restricted, coerced, or pushed into something against what they will is a slave. Epictetus Discourses for Point 1. Take a look at some of the most powerful, rich, and famous people in the world. Ignore the trappings of their success and what they're able to buy. Look instead at what they're forced to trade and return look at what success has cost them. Mostly freedom, their work demands they wear a suit. Their success depends on attending certain parties, kissing up to people they don't like. It will require inevitably realizing they are unable to say what they actually think. Worse, it demands that they become a different type of person or do bad things. Sure, it might pay well, but they haven't truly examined the transaction. As Seneca put it, slavery resides under marble and gold. Too many successful people are prisoners in jails of their own making. Is that what you want? Is that what you're working hard toward? Let's hope not. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Freedom isn't secured by filling up on your heart's desire, but by removing your desire. Epictetus Discourses, the 1st of April 175. There are two ways to be wealthy: to get everything you want or to want everything you have. Which is easier right here and right now? The same goes for freedom. If you chafe and fight and struggle for more, you will never be free. If you could find and focus on the pockets of freedom you already have, well, then you'd be free right here, right now. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
Eat like a human being. Drink like a human being. Dress up, marry, have children, get politically active, suffer abuse, bear with a headstrong brother, father, son, neighbor, or companion. Show us these things so we can see that you truly have learned it from the philosophers. Epictetus Discourses 3.1.5-6. Plutarch, a Roman biographer as well as an admirer of the Stoics, didn't begin his study of the great Roman literature until late in life, but as he recounts in his biography of Demosthenes, he was surprised at how quickly all came to him. He wrote, "It wasn't so much that the words brought me into a full understanding of events, as that somehow I had a personal experience of the events that allowed me to follow closely the meaning of the words." This is what Epictetus means about the study of philosophy. Study, yes, but go live your life as well. It's the only way that you'll actually understand what any of it means, and more important, it's only from your actions and choices over time that it will be possible to see whether you took any of the teachings to heart. Be aware of that today when you're going to work, going on a date, deciding whom to vote for, calling your parents in the evening, waving to your neighbor as you walk to your door, tipping the delivery man, saying good night to someone you love. All of that is philosophy. All of it is experience that brings meaning to the words. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. It is quite impossible to unite happiness with the yearning for what we don't have. Happiness is all that it wants, and resembling the well-fed, there shouldn't be hunger or thirst. Epictetus Discourses 3.24. I'll be happy when I graduate, we tell ourselves. I'll be happy when I get this promotion, when this diet pays off, when I have the money that my parents never had. Conditional happiness is what psychologists call this kind of thinking, like the horizon. You can walk for miles and miles and never reach it. You won't even get any closer. Eagerly anticipating some future event, passionately imagining something you desire, looking forward to some happy scenario. As pleasurable as these activities might seem, they ruin your chance at happiness here and now. Locate that yearning for more, better, someday, and see it for what it is, the enemy of your contentment. Choose it or your happiness, as Epictetus says the two are not compatible. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
This is the true athlete, the person in rigorous training against false impressions. Remain firm. You who suffered, don't be kidnapped by your impressions. The struggle is great, the task divine, to gain mastery, freedom, happiness, and tranquility. Epictetus Discourses 2.18, 27-28. Epictetus also used the metaphor of a storm, saying that our impressions are not unlike extreme weather that can catch us and whirl us about. When we get worked up or passionate about an issue, we can relate. But let's think about the role of the weather in modern times. Today, we have forecasters and experts who can fairly accurately predict storm patterns today. We're defenseless against a hurricane only if we refuse to prepare or heed the warnings. If we don't have a plan, if we never learn how to put up the storm windows, we will be at the mercy of these external and internal elements. We're still puny human beings compared with 100-mile-per-hour winds. But we have the advantage of being able to prepare, being able to struggle against them in a new way. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
An important place to begin in philosophy is this: a clear perception of one's own ruling principle. Epictetus Discourses 1.26. Philosophy is intimidating. Where does one start? With books, with lectures, with the sale of your worldly possessions. None of these things. Epictetus is saying that one becomes a philosopher when they begin to exercise their guiding reason and start to question the emotions and beliefs and even language that others take for granted. It is thought that an animal has self-awareness when it is able to fully recognize itself in a mirror. Perhaps we could say that we begin our journey into philosophy when we become aware of the ability to analyze our own minds. Can you start with that step today? When you do, you'll find that from it we really come alive, that well-lived lives, to paraphrase Socrates, that are actually worth living. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Whenever you get an impression of some pleasure, as with any impression, guard yourself from being carried away by it. Let it await your action. Give yourself a pause. After that, bring to mind both times. First, when you have enjoyed the pleasure, and later, and you will regret it and hate yourself. Then compare to those the joy and satisfaction you'd feel for abstaining altogether. However, if a seemingly appropriate time rises to act on it, don't be overcome by its comfort, pleasantness, and allure. But against all of this, how much better the consciousness of conquering it. Epictetus Enchiridion 34. Self-control is a difficult thing, no question, which is why a popular trick from dieting might be helpful. Some diets allow a cheat day, 1 day per week, in which dieters can eat anything and everything they want. Indeed, They're encouraged to write a list during the week of all the foods they craved, so they can enjoy them all at once as a treat. The thinking being that if you're eating healthy, 6 out of 7 days you're still ahead. At first, this sounds like a dream, but anyone who has actually done this knows the truth. Each cheat day you eat yourself sick and hate yourself afterward. Soon enough, you're willingly abstaining from cheating at all because you don't need it and you definitely don't want it. It's not unlike a parent catching her child with cigarettes and forcing him to smoke the whole pack. It's important to connect the so-called temptation with its actual effects once you understand that indulging might actually be worse than resisting. The urge begins to lose its appeal. In this way, self-control becomes the real pleasure, and the temptation becomes the regret. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. From Rusticus I learned to read carefully and not be satisfied with a rough understanding of the whole, and not to agree too quickly with those who have a lot to say about something. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 1.7.3. The first book of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations begins with a catalogue of gratitude. He thanks one by one the leading influences in his life. One of the people he thanks is Quintus Junius Rusticus, a teacher who developed in his student a love of deep clarity and understanding, a desire to not just stop at the surface when it comes to learning. It was also from Rusticus that Marcus was introduced to Epictetus. In fact, Rusticus loaned Marcus his personal copy of Epictetus's lectures. Marcus clearly wasn't satisfied with just getting the gist of these lectures and didn't simply accept them on his teacher's recommendation. Paul Johnson once joked that Edmund Wilson read books as though the author was on trial for his life. That's how Marcus read Epictetus, and when the lessons passed muster, he absorbed them. They became part of his DNA as a human being. He quoted them at length over the course of his life, finding real clarity and strength in words. Even amid the immense luxury and power he would come to possess. That's the kind of deep reading and study we need to cultivate as well, which is why we're reading just 1 page a day instead of a chapter at a time, so we can take the time to read attentively and deeply. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Who then is invincible? The one who cannot be upset by anything outside their reasoned choice. Epictetus, Discourses 1.18. Have you ever watched a seasoned pro handle the media? No question is too tough, no tone too pointed or insulting. They parry every blow with humor, pose, and patience. Even when stung or provoked, they choose not to flinch or react. They're able to do this not only because of training and experience, but because they understand that reacting emotionally will only make the situation worse. The media is waiting for them to slip up or get upset, so to successfully navigate press events they have internalized the importance of keeping themselves under calm control. It's unlikely you'll face a horde of probing reporters bombarding you with insensitive questions today, but it might be helpful whatever stresses or frustrations or overload that do come your way to picture that image and use it as your model for dealing with them. Our reason choice, our proheresis, as the Stoics called it, is a kind of invincibility that we can cultivate. We can shrug off hostile attacks and breeze through pressure or problems and, like our model, when we finish, we can point back into the crowd and say, "Next." Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. I don't agree with those who plunge headlong into the middle of the flood and who, accepting a turbulent life, struggle daily in great spirit with difficult circumstances. The wise person will endure that, but won't choose it, choosing to be at peace rather than at war. Seneca, Moral Letters 28.7. It has become a cliché to quote Theodore Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech, which lionizes the one whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly. Compared with the critic who sits on the sidelines, Roosevelt gave that speech shortly after he left office at the height of his popularity. In a few years, he would run against his former protege in an attempt to retake the White House, losing badly and nearly assassinated in the process. He would also nearly die exploring a river in the Amazon, kill thousands of animals in African safaris, and then beg Woodrow Wilson to allow him to enlist in World War I, despite being 59 years old. He would do a lot of things that seem somewhat baffling in retrospect. Theodore Roosevelt was a truly great man, but he was also driven by a compulsion, a work and activity addiction that was seemingly without end. Many of us share this affliction, being driven by something we can't control. We're afraid of being still, so we seek out strife and action as a distraction. We choose to be at war in some cases, literally, when peace is in fact the more honorable and fitting choice. Yes, the man in the arena is admirable, as is the soldier and the politician and the businesswoman and all the other occupations, but, and this is a big but, only if we're in the arena for the right reasons. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Remember to conduct yourself in life as if at a banquet. As something being passed around comes to you, reach out your hand and take a moderate helping. Does it pass you by? Don't stop it. It hasn't yet come. Don't burn in desire for it. but wait until it arrives in front of you. Act this way with children, a spouse, toward position. With wealth one day it will make you worthy of a banquet with the gods. Epictetus Enchiridion 1. The next time you see something you want, remember Epictetus's metaphor of life's banquet as you find yourself getting excited, ready to do anything and everything to get at the equivalent of reaching across the table and grabbing a dish out of someone's hands. Just remind yourself that's bad manners and unnecessary, then wait patiently for your turn. This metaphor has other interpretations too. For instance, we might reflect that we're lucky to have been invited to such a wonderful feast, gratitude, or that we should take our time and savor the taste of what's on offer, enjoying the present moment. But that to stuff ourselves sick with food and drink serves no one. Least of all our health. Gluttony is a deadly sin, after all. That at the end of the meal, it's rude not to help the host clean up and do the dishes. Selflessness. And finally, that next time, it's our turn to host and treat others just as we had been treated. Charity. Enjoy the meal. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. Frame your thoughts like this: you are an old person. You won't let yourself be enslaved by this any longer, no longer pulled like a puppet by every impulse. And you'll stop complaining about your present fortune or dreading the future. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 2.2. We resent the person who comes in and tries to boss us around. Don't tell me how to dress, how to think, how to do my job, how to live. This is because we are independent, self-sufficient people, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. Yet if someone says something we disagree with, something inside us tells us we have to argue with them. If there's a plate of cookies in front of us, we have to eat them. If someone does something we dislike, we have to get mad about it. When something bad happens, we have to be sad, depressed, or worried. But if something good happens a few minutes later, all of a sudden we're happy, excited, and want more. We would never let another person jerk us around the way we let our impulses do. It's time we start seeing it that way, that we're not puppets that can be made to dance this way or that way. Just because we feel like it, we should be the ones in control, not our emotions, because we are independent, self-sufficient people. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. You cry, "I'm suffering severe pain." Are you then relieved from feeling it if you bear it in an unmanly way? Seneca, Moral Letters 78.17. The next time someone gets upset near you, crying, yelling, breaking something, being pointed or cruel. Watch how quickly this statement will stop them cold. I hope this is making you feel better, because of course it isn't. Only in the bubble of extreme emotion can we justify any of that kind of behavior, and when called to account for it, we usually feel sheepish or embarrassed. It's worth applying that standard to yourself. The next time you find yourself in the middle of a freak-out, or moaning and groaning with flu-like symptoms, or crying tears of regret, just ask, is this actually making me feel better? Is this actually relieving any of the symptoms I wish were gone? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
We can remove most sins if we have a witness standing by as we are about to go wrong. The soul should have someone it can respect, by whose example it can make its inner sanctum more inviolable. Happy is the person who can improve others, not only when present, but even when in their thoughts. Seneca, Moral Letters 11.9. Cato the Younger, a Roman politician best known for his self-discipline and for his heroic defense of the Republic against Julius Caesar, appears constantly throughout Stoic literature, which is interesting because he didn't write anything down. He taught no classes, he gave no interviews. His bold and brave example is what made him such a commonly cited and quoted philosopher. Seneca tells us that we should each have our own Cato, great and noble person he can allow into our minds and use to guide our actions, even when they're not physically present. The economist Adam Smith had a similar concept, which he called the indifferent spectator. It doesn't have tone actual person, just someone who, like Seneca said, can stand witness to our behavior. Someone who can quietly admonish us if we are considering doing something lazy, dishonest, or selfish, and if we do it right and live our lives in such a way, perhaps we can serve as someone else's couture indifferent spectator when they need it. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. These things don't go together. You must be a unified human being, either good or bad. You must diligently work either on your own reasoning or on things out of your control. Take great care with the inside and not what's outside, which is to say, stand with the philosopher or else with the mob. Epictetus Discourses 3.15. We're all complicated people. We have multiple sides to ourselves, conflicting wants, desires, and fears. The outside world is unless confusing and contradictory. If we're not careful, all these forces, pushing and pulling, will eventually tear apart. We can't live as both Jekyll and Hyde. Not for long, anyway. We have a choice: to stand with the philosopher and focus strenuously on the inside, or to behave like a leader of a mob, becoming whatever the crowd needs at a given moment. If we do not focus on our internal integration, on self-awareness, we risk external disintegration. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Ask yourself the following first thing in the morning. What am I lacking in attaining freedom from passion? What for tranquility? What am I? A mere body, a stateholder, or reputation? None of these things. What, then, a rational being? What then is demanded of me? Meditate on your actions. How did I steer away from serenity? What did I do that was unfriendly, unsocial, or uncaring? What did I fail to do in all these things? Epictetus discourses for point 6. Many successful people have a morning ritual. For some, it's meditation. For others, it's exercise. For many, it's journaling. Just a few pages where they write down their thoughts, fears, hopes. In these cases, the point is not so much the activity itself as it is the ritualized reflection. The idea is to take some time to look inward and examine. Taking that time is what Stoics advocated more than almost anything else. We don't know whether Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the morning or at night, but we know he carved out moments of quiet alone time and that he wrote for himself, not for anyone else. If you're looking for a place to start your own ritual, you could do worse than Marcus's example and Epictetus's checklist. Every day, starting today, ask yourself these same tough questions. Let philosophy and hard work guide you to better answers, one morning at a time over the course of a life. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Keep this thought at the ready at daybreak and through the day and night. There is only one path to happiness, and that is in giving up all outside of your sphere of choice, regarding nothing else as your possession, surrendering all else to God and fortune. Epictetus Discourses, the 4th of April, 39. This morning, remind yourself of what is in your control and what's not in your control. Remind yourself to focus on the former and not the latter. Before lunch, remind yourself that the only thing you truly possess is your ability to make choices and to use reason and judgment. When doing so, this is the only thing that can never be taken from you completely. In the afternoon, remind yourself that aside from the choices you make, your fate is not entirely up to you. The world is spinning and we spin along with it, whichever direction, good or bad. In the evening, remind yourself again how much is outside of your control and where your choices begin and end. As you lie in bed, remember that sleep is a form of surrender and trust and how easily it comes, and prepare to start the whole cycle over again tomorrow. If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. Don't wish to seem knowledgeable, and if some regard you as important, is trust yourself. Epictetus Enchiridion 13a. One of the most powerful things you can do as a human being in our hyper-connected 24/7 media world is say, I don't know, or, more provocatively, I don't care. Most of society seems to have taken it as a commandment that one must know about every single current event, watch every episode of every critically acclaimed television series, follow the news religiously, and present themselves to others as an informed and worldly individual. But where is the evidence that this is actually necessary? Is the obligation enforced by the police, or is it that you're just afraid of seeming silly at a dinner party? Yes, you owe it to your country and your family to know generally about events that may directly affect them, but that's about all. How much more time, energy, and pure brain power would you have available if you drastically cut your media consumption? How much more rested and present would you feel if you were no longer excited and outraged by every scandal, breaking story, and potential crisis, many of which never come to pass anyway? Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. The essence of good is a certain kind of reasoned choice, just as the essence of evil is another kind. What about externals, then? They are only the raw material for our reasoned choice, which finds its own good or evil in working with them. How will it find the good? Not by marveling at the material. For, if judgments about the material are straight, that makes our choices good. But if those judgments are twisted, our choices turn bad. Epictetus Discourses 1.9. The Stoics seek steadiness, stability, and tranquility, traits most of us aspire to, but seem to experience only fleetingly. How do they accomplish this elusive goal? How does one embody eustatheia, the word Aryan used to describe this teaching of Epictetus? Well, it's not luck. It's not by eliminating outside influences or running away to quiet and solitude. Instead, it's about filtering the outside world through the straightener of our judgment. That's what our reason can do. It can take the crooked, confusing, and overwhelming nature of external events and make them orderly. However, if our judgments are crooked because we don't use reason, then everything that follows will be crooked, and we will lose our ability to steady ourselves in the chaos and rush of life. If you want to be steady, if you want clarity, proper judgment is the best way. Erase the false impressions from your mind by constantly saying to yourself, I have it in my soul to keep out any evil, desire, or any kind of disturbance. Instead, seeing the true nature of things, I will give them only their due. Always remember this power that nature gave you. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 8.9. Anyone who has taken a yoga class or been exposed to Hindu or Buddhist thought has probably heard of the concept of a mantra in Sanskrit. It means sacred utterance, essentially a word, a phrase, a thought, even a sound intended to provide clarity or spiritual guidance. A mantra can be especially helpful in the meditative process because it allows us to block out everything else. We focus, it's fitting, then, that Marcus Aurelius would suggest this Stoic mantra, a reminder or watch phrase to use when we feel false impressions, distractions, or the crush of everyday life upon us. It says, essentially, I have the power within me to keep that out. I can see the truth. Change the wording as you like. That part is up to you. But have a mantra and use it to find the clarity you crave. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. The diseases of the rational soul are long-standing and hardened vices, such as greed and ambition. They have put the soul in a straitjacket and have begun to be permanent evils inside it. To put it briefly, this sickness is an unrelenting distortion of judgment. So things that are only mildly desirable are vigorously sought after. Seneca, Moral Letters 75.11. And the financial disaster of the late 2000s, hundreds of smart, rational people lost trillions of dollars worth of wealth. How could such smart people have been so foolish? These people knew the system, knew how the markets were supposed to work, and had managed billions, if not trillions of dollars, and yet, almost to a person, they were wrong to the tune of global market havoc. It's not hard to look at that situation and understand that greed was some part of the problem. Greed was what led people to create complex markets that no one understood in the hope of making a quick buck. Greed caused other people to make trades on strange pools of debt. Greed prevented anyone from calling out this situation for what it was, a house of cards just waiting for the slightest breeze to knock it all down. It doesn't do you much good to criticize those folks after the fact. It's better to look at how greed and vices might be having a similar effect in your own life. What lapses in judgment might your vices be causing you? What sicknesses might you have? And how can your rational mind step in and regulate them? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
Whenever someone has done wrong by you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it. For when you see that, you'll feel compassion instead of astonishment or rage. For you may yourself have the same notions of good and evil, or similar ones, in which case you'll make an allowance for what they've done. But if you no longer hold the same notions, you'll be more readily gracious for their error. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 7.26. Socrates, perhaps the wisest person to ever live, used to say that nobody does wrong willingly, meaning that one is wrong on purpose either. Nobody thinks they're wrong, even when they are. They think they're right, they're just mistaken. Otherwise, they wouldn't think it anymore. Could it be that the slights you've experienced or the harm that others have done to you was not inflicted intentionally? What if they simply thought they were doing the right thing, for them, even for You? It's like the memorial for Confederate soldiers at Arlington, obviously a cause that was wrongly fought for by people doing wrong, which states, in part, that the Confederate soldiers served in simple obedience to duty as they understood it. Again, they understood wrongly, but it was their genuine understanding, just as Lincoln was genuine when he ended his famous Cooper Union speech by saying, "Let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it." How much more tolerant and understanding would you be today if you could see the actions of other people as attempts to do the right thing? Whether you agree or not, how radically would this lens change your perspective on otherwise offensive or belligerent actions?
Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
For to be wise is only one thing, to fix our attention on our intelligence, which guides all things everywhere. Heraclitus, quoted in Diogenes Laertius, Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, 9.1. Why did I do that? You've probably asked yourself. We all have. How could I have been so stupid? What was I thinking you weren't? That's the problem. Within that head of yours is all the reason. And we control our reasoned choice and all acts that depend on that moral will. What's not under our control are the body and any of its parts, our possessions, parents, siblings, children, country, anything with which we might associate. Epictetus Discourses, January 22nd, 10. This is important enough that it bears repeating. A wise person knows what's inside their circle of control and what is outside of it. The good news is that it's pretty easy to remember what is inside our control, according to the Stoics. The circle of control contains just one thing, your mind. That's right. Even your physical body isn't completely within the circle. After all, you could be struck with a physical illness or impairment at any moment. You could be traveling in a foreign country and be thrown in jail. But this is all good news because it drastically reduces the amount of things that you need to think about. There is clarity and simplicity, while everyone else is running around with a list of responsibilities a mile long. Things they're not actually responsible for. You've got just that one-item list. You've got just one thing to manage, your choices, your will, your mind, so mind it.
The soul is like a bowl of water, and our impressions are like the ray of light falling upon the water. When the water is troubled, it appears that the light itself is moved too, but it isn't. So when a person loses their composure, it isn't their skills and virtues that are troubled, but the spirit in which they exist. And when that spirit calms down, so do those things. Epictetus Discourses 3.3. You messed up a little, or maybe you messed up a lot, Thought so. That doesn't change the philosophy that you know. It's not as if your reasoned choice has permanently abandoned you. Rather, it was you who temporarily abandoned it. Remember that the tools and aims of our training are unaffected by the turbulence of the moment. Stop. Regain your composure. It's waiting for you. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself, which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil, not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. Epictetus. The single most important practice in Stoic philosophy is differentiating between what we can change and what we can't, what we have influence over and what we do not. A flight is delayed because of whether no amount of yelling at an airline representative will end a storm. No amount of wishing will make you taller or shorter or born in a different country. No matter how hard you try, you can't make someone like you. And on top of that, time spent hurling yourself at these immovable objects is time not spent on the things you can change. The recovery community practices something called the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that addicts cannot change the abuse suffered in childhood. They cannot undo the choices they have made or the hurt they have caused, but they can change the future through the power they have in the present moment. As Epictetus said, they can control the choices they make right now. The same is true for us today if we can focus on making clear what parts of our day are within our control and what parts are not. We will not only be happier, we will have a distinct advantage over other people who fail to realize they are fighting an unwinnable battle.
At every moment, keep a sturdy mind on the task at hand. As a Roman and human being, doing it with strict and simple dignity, affection, freedom, and justice, giving yourself a break from all other considerations. You can do this if you approach each task as if it is your last, giving up every distraction, emotional subversion of reason, and all drama, vanity, and complaint over your fair share. You can see how mastery over a few things makes it possible to live an abundant and devout life for. If you keep watch over these things, the gods won't ask for more. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 2.5. Each day presents the chance to overthink things. What should I wear? Do they like me? Am I eating well enough? What's next for me in life? Is my boss happy with my work today? Let's focus just on what's in front of us. We'll follow the dictum that New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick gives his players. Do your job like a Roman, like a good soldier, like a master of our craft. We don't need to get lost in 1,000 other distractions or in other people's business. Marcus says to approach each task as if it were your last, because it very well could be, and even if it isn't, botching what's right in front of you doesn't help anything. Find clarity in the simplicity of doing your job today. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content.
What is the fruit of these teachings? Only the most beautiful and proper harvest of the truly educated tranquility, fearlessness, and freedom. We should not trust the masses who say, only the free can be educated, but rather the lovers of wisdom who say that only the educated are free. Epictetus. Why did you pick up this book? Why pick up any book? Not to seem smarter, not to pass time on the plane, not to hear what you want to hear. There are plenty of easier choices than reading. No, you picked up this book because you are learning how to live, because you want to be freer, fearless, and achieve a state of peace. Education, reading, and meditating on the wisdom of great minds is not to be done for its own sake. It has a purpose. Remember that imperative on the days you start to feel distracted when watching television or having a snack. Seems like a better use of your time than reading or studying philosophy. Knowledge, self-knowledge in particular, is freedom.
Don't be bounced around, but submit every impulse to the claims of justice, and protect your clear conviction in every appearance. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations for Point to 2. Think of the manic people in your life, not the ones suffering from an unfortunate disorder, but the ones whose lives and choices are in disorder. Everything is soaring highs or crushing lows. The day is either amazing or awful. Aren't those people exhausting? Don't you wish they just had a filter through which they could test the good impulses versus the bad ones? There is such a filter: justice, reason, philosophy. If there's a central message of Stoic thought, it's this: impulses of all kinds are going to come, and your work is to control them. Like bringing a dog to heel. Put more simply, think before you act. Ask, who's in control here? What principles are guiding me? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
In public, avoid talking often and excessively about your accomplishments and dangers, for however much you enjoy recounting your dangers, it's not so pleasant for others to hear about your affairs. Epictetus, Enchiridion 33.14. Modern philosopher Nassim Taleb has warned of the narrative fallacy, the tendency to assemble unrelated events of the past into stories. These stories, however gratifying to create, are inherently misleading. They lead to a sense of cohesion and certainty that isn't real. If that's too heady, remember that, as Epictetus points out, there is another reason not to tell stories about your past. It's boring, annoying, and self-absorbed. It might make you feel good to dominate the conversation and make it all about you. But how do you think it is for everyone else? Do you think people are really enjoying the highlights of your high school football days? Is this really the time for another exaggerated tale of your sexual prowess? Try your best not to create this fantasy bubble. Live in what's real. Listen and connect with people. Don't perform for them. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. All you need are these: certainty of judgment in the present moment, action for the common good the present moment, and an attitude of gratitude in the present moment for anything that comes your way. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 9.6. Perception, action, will. Those are the three overlapping but critical disciplines of Stoicism, as well as the organization of this book and year-long journey you've just begun. There's more to the philosophy, certainly, and we could spend all day talking about the unique beliefs of the various Stoics. This is what Heraclitus thought. Zeno is from Citium, a city in Cyprus, and he believed. But would such facts really help you day to day? What clarity does trivia provide? Instead, the following little reminder sums up the three most essential parts of Stoic philosophy, worth carrying with you every day into every decision. Control your perceptions, direct your actions properly, willingly accept what's outside your control. That's all we need to do.
Take a good hard look at people's ruling principle, especially of the wise, what they run away from and what they seek out. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 4.38. Seneca has said, without a ruler to do it against, you can't make crooked straight. That is the role of wise people in our lives, to serve as model and inspiration, to bounce our ideas off and test our presumptions. Who that person will be for you is up to you. Perhaps it's your father or your mother. Maybe it's a philosopher or a writer or a thinker. Perhaps WWJD, What Would Jesus Do, is the right model for you. But pick someone, watch what they do and what they don't do, and do your best to do the same. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. How many have laid waste to your life when you weren't aware of what you were losing? How much was wasted in pointless grief, foolish joy, greedy desire, and social amusements? How little of your own was left to you. You will realize you are dying before your time. Seneca, on the brevity of life. One of the hardest things to do in life is to say no to invitations, to requests, to obligations, to the stuff that everyone else is doing. Even harder is saying no to certain time-consuming emotions: anger, excitement, distraction, obsession, lust. None of these impulses feels like a big deal by itself, but run amok. They become a commitment like anything else. If you're not careful, These are precisely the impositions that will overwhelm and consume your life. Do you ever wonder how you can get some of your time back? How you can feel less busy? Start by learning the power of no, as in no, thank you, and no. I'm not going to get caught up in that, and no, I just can't right now. It may hurt some feelings, it may turn people off, it may take some hard work, but the more you say no to the things that don't matter, the more you can say yes to the things that do. This will let you live and enjoy your life, the life that you want. There is no more stupefying thing than anger. Nothing more bet on its own strength, if successful, none more arrogant, if fooled, none more insane since it's not driven back by weariness. Even in defeat, when fortune removes its adversary, it turns its teeth on itself. Seneca on Anger 3.1.5. As the Stoics have said many times, getting angry almost never solves anything. Usually it makes things worse. We get upset. Then the other person gets upset. Now everyone is upset. And the problem is no closer to getting solved. Many successful people will try to tell you that anger is a powerful fuel in their lives. The desire to prove them all wrong or shove it in their faces has made many a millionaire. The anger at being called fat or stupid has created fine physical specimens and brilliant minds. The anger at being rejected has motivated many to carve their own path. But that's short-sighted. Such stories ignore the pollution produced as a side effect, and the wear and tear it put on the engine. It ignores what happens when that initial anger runs out, and how now more and more must be generated to keep the machine going until, eventually, the only source left is anger at oneself. Hate is too great a burden to bear, Martin Luther King, Jr. warned his fellow civil rights leaders in 1967, even though they had every reason to respond to hate with hate. The same is true for anger. In fact, it's true for most extreme emotions. They are toxic fuel. There's plenty of it out in the world. No question, but never worth the costs that come along with it. If someone asks you how to write your name, would you bark out each letter? And if they get angry, would you then return the anger? Wouldn't you rather gently spell out each letter for them? So then, remember in life that your duties are the sum of individual acts. Pay attention to each of these as you do your duty. Just methodically complete your task. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.26. Here's a common scenario. You're working with a frustrating coworker or a difficult boss. They ask you to do something, and because you dislike the messenger, you immediately object. There is this problem or that one, or their request is obnoxious and rude. So you tell them, "No, I'm not going to do it." Then they retaliate by not doing something that you had previously asked of them, and so the conflict escalates. Meanwhile, if you could step back and see it objectively, you'd probably see that not everything they're asking for is unreasonable. In fact, some of it is pretty easy to do, or is, at least, agreeable, and if you did it, it might make the rest of the tasks a bit more tolerable, too. Pretty soon, you've done the entire thing. Life and our job is difficult enough. Let's not make it harder by getting emotional about insignificant matters or digging in for battles we don't actually care about. Let's not let emotion get in the way of kathekon, the simple, appropriate actions on the path to virtue. So subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Keep a list before your mind of those who burn with anger and resentment about something, of even the most renowned for success, misfortune, evil deeds, or any special distinction. Then ask yourself, how did that work out? Smoke and dust, the stuff of simple myth trying to bell a legend. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 12.27. In Marcus Aurelius's writings, he constantly points out how the emperors who came before him were barely remembered just a few years later. To him, this was a reminder that no matter how much he conquered, no matter how much he inflicted his will on the world, it would be like building a castle in the sand soon to be erased by the winds of time. The same goes for those driven to the heights of hate or anger or obsession or perfectionism. Marcus liked to point out that Alexander the Great, one of the most passionate and ambitious men who ever lived, was buried in the same ground as his mule driver. Eventually, all of us will pass away and slowly be forgotten. We should enjoy this brief time we have on earth, not enslave to emotions that make you miserable and dissatisfied. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Let all your efforts be directed to something. Let it keep that end in view. It's not activity that disturbs people, but false conceptions of things that drive them mad. Seneca, on Tranquility of Mind 12.5. Law 29 of the 48 Laws of Power is plan all the way to the end. Robert Greene writes, by planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances, and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. The second habit in the 7 habits of highly effective people is begin with an end in mind. Having an end in mind is no guarantee that you will reach it. No Stoic would tolerate that assumption. But not having an end in mind is a guarantee you won't. To the Stoics, Wass's false conceptions are responsible not just for disturbances in the soul, but for chaotic and dysfunctional lives and operations. When your efforts are not directed at a cause or a purpose, how will you know what to do day in and day out? How will you know what to say no to and what to say yes to? How will you know when you've had enough, when you've reached your goal, when you've gotten off track. If you've never defined what those things are, the answer is that you cannot, and so you are driven into failure or worse, into madness by the oblivion of directionlessness. A person who doesn't know what the universe is, doesn't know where they are. A person who doesn't know their purpose in life, doesn't know who they are or what the universe is. A person who doesn't know any one of these things, doesn't know why they are here. So what to make of people who seek or avoid the praise of those who have no knowledge of where or who they are? Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 8.52. The late comedian Mitch Hedberg had a funny story told in his act. Sitting down for an on-air interview, a radio DJ asked him, "So, who are you?" In that moment, he had to think, is this guy really deep, or did I drive to the wrong station? How often are we asked a simple question like, who are you? Or what do you do? Or where are you from? Considering it a superficial question, if we even consider it at all, we don't bother with more than a superficial answer. But, gun to their head, most people couldn't give much in the way of a substantive answer. Could you? Have you taken the time to get clarity about who you are and what you stand for? Or are you too busy chasing unimportant things, mimicking the wrong influences, and following disappointing or unfulfilling or non-existent paths?
There are 3 areas in which the person who would be wise and good must be trained. The first has to do with desires and aversions, that a person may never miss the mark in desires or fall into what repels them. The second has to do with impulses to act and not to act, and more broadly with duty, that a person may act deliberately for good reasons and not carelessly. The third has to do with freedom from deception and composure, and the whole area of judgment, the assent our mind gives to its perceptions of these areas. The chief and most urgent is the first, which has to do with the passions, for strong emotions arise only when we fail in our desires and aversions. Epictetus Discourses 3.2. Today, let's focus on the 3 areas of training that Epictetus laid out for us. First, we must consider what we should desire and what we should be averse to. Why? So that we want what is good and avoid what is bad. It's not enough to just listen to your body, because our attractions often lead us astray. Next, we must examine our impulses to act, that is, our motivations. Are we doing things for the right reasons, or do we act because we haven't stopped to think? Or do we believe that we have to do something? Finally, there is our judgment, our ability to see things clearly and properly comes when we use our great gift from nature, reason. These are three distinct areas of training, but in practice they are inextricably intertwined. Our judgment affects what we desire. Our desires affect how we act, just as our judgment determines how we act. But we can't just expect this to happen. We must put real thought and energy into each area of our lives. If we do, we'll find real clarity and success. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. We must give up many things to which we are addicted, considering them to be good, otherwise courage will vanish, which should continually test itself. Greatness of soul will be lost, which can stand out unless it disdains as petty what the mob regards as most desirable. Seneca, Moral Letters, 74, 12b-13. What we consider to be harmless indulgences can easily become full-blown addictions. We start with coffee in the morning, and soon enough we can't start the day without it. We check our email because it's part of our job, and soon enough we feel the phantom buzz of the phone in our pocket every few seconds. Soon enough, these harmless habits are running our lives, the little compulsions and drives. We have not only chip away at our freedom and sovereignty, they cloud our clarity. We think we're in control, but are we really? As one addict put it, addiction is when we've lost the freedom to abstain. Let us reclaim that freedom. What that addiction is for you can vary: soda, drugs, complaining, gossip, the internet, biting your nails. But you must reclaim the ability to abstain, because within it is your clarity and self-control. Some things are in our control, while others are not. We control our opinion, choice, desire, aversion, and, in a word, everything of our own doing. We don't control our body, property, reputation, position, and, in a word, everything not of our own doing. Even more, the things in our control are by nature free, unhindered and unobstructed, while those not in our control are weak, slavish, can be hindered, and are not our own. Epictetus, Enchiridion 1.1. Today, you won't control the external events that happen. Is that scary? A little? But it's balanced when we see that we can control our opinion about those events. You decide whether they're good or bad, whether they're fair or unfair. You don't control the situation, but you control what you think about it. See how that works. Every single thing that is outside your control, the outside world, other people, luck, karma, whatever, still presents a corresponding area that is in your control. This alone gives us plenty to manage, plenty of power. Test of all, an honest understanding of what is within our control provides real clarity about the world. All we have is our own mind. Remember that today, when you try to extend your reach outward, that it's much better and more appropriately directed inward. The proper work of the mind is the exercise of choice, refusal, yearning, repulsion, preparation, purpose, and assent. What then can pollute and clog the mind's proper functioning? Nothing but its own corrupt decisions. Epictetus discourses for point 116-7. Let's break down each one of those tasks. Choice to do and think right. Refusal of temptation, yearning to be better. Repulsion of negativity, of bad influences, of what isn't true. Preparation for what lies ahead or whatever may happen. Purpose, our guiding principle and highest priority. Assent, to be free of deception about what's inside and outside our control, and be ready to accept the latter. This is what the mind is here to do. We must make sure that it does and see everything else as pollution or a corruption.
What's left to be prized, this I think, to limit our action or inaction to only what's in keeping with the needs of our own preparation. It's what the exertions of education and teaching are all about. Here is the thing to be prized. If you hold this firmly, you'll stop trying to get yourself all the other things. If you don't, you won't be free, self-sufficient, or liberated from passion, but necessarily full of envy, jealousy, and suspicion for any who have the power to take them. And you will plot against those who do have what you prize. But by having some self-respect for your own mind and prizing it, you will please yourself and be in better harmony with your fellow human beings, and more in tune with the gods praising everything they have set in order and allotted you. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.16. Warren Buffett, whose net worth is approximately $65 billion, lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. John Urschel, a lineman for the Baltimore Ravens, makes millions but manages to live on $25,000 a year. San Antonio Spurs star Kawhi Leonard gets around in the 1997 Chevy Tahoe he's had since he was a teenager, even with a contract worth some $94 million. Why? It's not because these men are cheap. It's because the things that matter to them are cheap. Neither Buffett nor Urschel nor Leonard ended up this way by accident. Their lifestyle is the result of prioritizing. They cultivate interests that are decidedly below their financial means, and as a result, any income would allow them freedom to pursue the things they most care about. It just happens that they became wealthy beyond any expectation. This kind of clarity about what they love most in the world means they can enjoy their lives. It means they'd still be happy even if the markets were to turn or their careers were cut short by injury. The more things we desire and the more we have to do to earn or attain those achievements, the less we actually enjoy our lives and the less free we are. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Of all the things that art, some are good, others bad, and yet others indifferent. The good are virtues, and all that share in them. The bad are the vices, and all that indulge them. The indifferently in between virtue and vice, and include wealth, health, life, death, pleasure, and pain. Epictetus Discourses 2.19. Imagine the power you'd have in your life and relationships if all the things that trouble everyone else, how thin they are, how much money they have, how long they have left to live, how they will didn't matter so much. What if, where others were upset, envious, excited, possessive, or greedy, you were objective, calm, and clear-headed? Can you envision that? Imagine what it would do for your relationships at work, or for your love life, or your friendships. Seneca was an incredibly wealthy, even famous man, yet he was a Stoic. He had many material things, yet, as the Stoics say, he was also indifferent to them. He enjoyed them while they were there, but accepted that they might someday disappear. What a better attitude than desperately craving more or fearfully dreading losing even one penny. Indifference is solid middle ground. It's not about avoidance or shunning, but rather not giving any possible outcome more power or preference than is appropriate. This not easy to do, certainly, but if you could manage, how much more relaxed would you be? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. So, concerning the things we pursue, and for which we vigorously exert ourselves, we owe this consideration: either there is nothing useful in them, or most aren't useful. Some of them are superfluous, while others aren't worth that much. But we don't discern this and see them as free when they cost us dearly. Seneca, Moral Letters 42.6. Of Seneca's many letters, this is probably one of the most important and one of the least understood. He's making a point that goes unheard in a society of ever bigger houses and ever more possessions, that there's a hidden cost to all that accumulating, and the sooner we're aware of it, the better. Remember, even what we get for free has a cost, if only in what we pay to store it in our garages and in our minds. As you walk past your possessions today, ask yourself, do I need this? Is it superfluous? What's this actually worth? What is it costing me? You might be surprised by the answers and how much we've been paying without even knowing it. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. The person is free who lives as they wish, neither compelled nor hindered, nor limited, whose choices aren't hampered, whose desires succeed, and who don't fall into what repels them, who wishes to live in deception, tripped up, mistaken, undisciplined, complaining, and a rut. No one. These are base people who don't live as they wish, and so no base person is free. Epictetus Discourses for .1.1-3. It is sad to consider how much time many people spend in the course of a day doing things they have to do, not necessary obligations like work or family, but the obligations we needlessly accept out of vanity or ignorance. Consider the actions you take in order to impress other people, or the lengths who go to fulfill urgisate desires he don't even question. In one of his famous letters, Seneca observes how often powerful people are slaves to their money, to their positions, to their mistresses, even as was legal in Rome to their slaves. No slavery is more disgraceful, he quipped, than one which is self-imposed. We see this slavery all the time, a codependent person who can't help but clean up after a dysfunctional friend, a boss who micromanages employees and sweats every penny. The countless causes, events, and get-togethers we're too busy to attend but agree anyway. Take an inventory of your obligations from time to time. How many of these are self-imposed? How many of them are truly necessary? Are you as free as you think? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
Our soul is sometimes a king and sometimes a tyrant, a king. By attending to what is honorable, protects the good health of the body in its care, and gives it no base or sordid command, but an uncontrolled, desire-fueled, overindulged soul is turned from a king into that most feared and detested thing, a tyrant. Seneca, Moral Letters, 114.24. There is that saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. At first glance, that's true. Seneca's pupil Nero and his litany of crimes and murders is a perfect example. Another emperor, Domitian, arbitrarily banished all philosophers from Rome. Epictetus was forced to flee. As a result, many of Rome's emperors were tyrants. Yet, not many years later, Epictetus would become a close friend of another emperor, Hadrian, who would help Marcus Aurelius to the throne. One of the truest examples of a wise philosopher king. So it's not so clear that power always corrupts. In fact, it looks like it comes down, in many ways, to the inner strength and self-awareness of individuals, what they value, what desires they keep in check, whether their understanding of fairness and justice can counteract the temptations of unlimited wealth and deference. The same is true for you, both personally and professionally. Tyrant or king, hero or Nero, which will you be? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. For if a person shifts their caution to their own reasoned choices and the acts of those choices, they will at the same time gain the will to avoid. But if they shift their caution away from their own reasoned choices to things not under their control, seeking to avoid what is controlled by others, they will then be agitated, fearful, and unstable. Epictetus Discourses, the 1st of February, 12. The image of the Zen philosopher is the monk up the green, quiet hills, or in a beautiful temple on some rocky cliff. The Stoics are the antithesis of this idea. Instead, they are the man in the marketplace, the senator in the forum, the brave wife waiting for her soldier to return from battle, the sculptor busy in her studio. Still, the Stoic is equally at peace.
Epictetus is reminding you that serenity and stability are results of your choices and judgment, not your environment. If you seek to avoid all disruptions to tranquility, other people, external events, stress, you will never be successful. Your problems will follow you wherever you run and hide. But if you seek to avoid the harmful and disruptive judgments that cause those problems, then you will be stable and steady wherever you happen to be. Understand at last that you have something in you more powerful and divine than what causes the bodily passions and pulls you like a mere puppet. What thoughts now occupy my mind? Is it not fear, suspicion, desire, or something like that? Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 12.19. Think of all the interests vying for a share of your wallet, or for a second of your attention. Food scientists are engineering products to exploit your taste buds. Silicon Valley engineers are designing applications as addictive as gambling. The media is manufacturing stories to provoke outrage and anger. These are just a small slice of the temptations and forces acting on us, distracting us, and pulling us away from the things that truly matter. Marcus, thankfully, was not exposed to these extreme parts of our modern culture, but he knew plenty of distracting sinkholes too: gossip, the endless call of work, as well as fear, suspicion, lust. Every human being is pulled by these internal and external forces that are increasingly more powerful and harder to resist. Philosophy is simply asking us to pay careful attention and to strive to be more than a pawn. As Viktor Franklin puts it in The Will to Meaning, man is pushed by drives but pulled by values. These values and inner awareness prevent us from being puppets. Sure, paying attention requires work and awareness, but isn't that better than being jerked about on a string? I will keep constant watch over myself, and most usefully, will put each day up for review, for this is what makes us evil, that none of us looks back upon our own lives. We reflect upon only that which we are about to do, and yet our plans for the future descend from the past. Seneca, Moral Letters, 83.2. In a letter to his older brother Novatus, Seneca describes a beneficial exercise he borrowed from another prominent philosopher. At the end of each day, he would ask himself variations of the following questions: what bad habit did I curb today? How am I better? Were my actions just? How can I improve? At the beginning or end of each day, the Stoic sits down with his journal and reviews what he did, what he thought, what could be improved. It's for this reason that Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is a somewhat inscrutable book. It was for personal clarity and not public benefit. Writing down Stoic exercises was and is also a form of practicing them,
just as repeating a prayer or hymn might be. Keep your own journal, whether it's saved on a computer or in a little notebook. Take time to consciously recall the events of the previous day. Be unflinching in your assessments. Notice what contributed to your happiness and what detracted from it. Write down what you'd like to work on or quotes that you like. By making the effort to record such thoughts, you're less likely to forget them. An added bonus, you'll have a running tally to track your progress too. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content.
You shouldn't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care at all. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 7.38. A significant chunk of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is made up of short quotes and passages from other writers. This is because Marcus wasn't necessarily trying to produce original work. Instead, he was practicing, reminding himself here and there of important lessons, and sometimes these lessons were things he had read. This particular quote is special because it comes from a play by Euripides which, except for a handful of quoted fragments like this, is lost to us. From what we can gather about the play, Bellerophon, the hero, comes to doubt the existence of the gods. But in this line, he is saying, why bother getting mad at causes and forces far bigger than us? After all, external events are not sentient beings. They cannot respond to our shouts and cries, and neither can the most indifferent gods. Why do we take these things personally? They don't care about your reaction. They are not people. So stop acting like getting worked up is having an impact on a given situation. That's what Marcus was reminding himself of here. Circumstances are incapable of considering ordering for your feelings, your anxiety, or your excitement. Situations don't care at all. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Tranquility can't be grasped except by those who have reached an unwavering and firm power of judgment. The rest constantly fall and rise in their decisions, wavering in a state of alternately rejecting and accepting things. What is the cause of this back and forth? It's because nothing is clear, and they rely on the most uncertain guide common opinion. Seneca, Moral Letters, 95.570-58a. In Seneca's essay on tranquility, he uses the Greek word euthymia, which he defines as believing in yourself and trusting that you are on the right path, and not being in doubt by following the myriad footpaths of those wandering in every direction. It is this state of mind, says, that produces tranquility. Clarity of vision allows us to have this belief. That's not to say we're always going to be 100% certain of everything, or that we even should be. Rather, it's that we can rest assured we're heading generally in the right direction, that we don't need to constantly compare ourselves with other people, or change our mind every 3 seconds based on new information. Instead, tranquility and peace are found in identifying our path and in sticking to it. staying the course, making adjustments here and there naturally, but ignoring the distracting sirens who beckon us to turn toward the rocks. So in the majority of other things, we address circumstances not in accordance with the right assumptions, but mostly by following wretched habit. Since all that I've said is the case, the person in training must seek to rise above, so as to stop seeking out pleasure and steering away from pain, to stop clinging to living and abhorring death, and in the case of property and money, to stop valuing receiving over giving. Musonius Rufus, Lectures 6.25. A worker is asked, "Why did you do it this way?" The answer, "Because that's the way we've always done things." The answer frustrates every good boss and sets the mouth of every entrepreneur watering. The worker has stopped thinking and is mindlessly operating out of habit. The business is ripe for disruption by a competitor, and the worker will probably get fired by any thinking boss. We should apply the same ruthlessness to our own habits. In fact, we are studying philosophy precisely to break ourselves of rote behavior. Find what you do out of rote memory or routine. Ask yourself, is this really the best way to do it? Know why you do what you do. Do it for the right reasons. I am your teacher, and you are learning in my school. My aim is to bring you to completion, unhindered, free from compulsive behavior, unrestrained, without shame, free, flourishing, and happy, looking to God in things great and small. Your aim is to learn and diligently practice all these things. Why then don't you complete the work? If you have the right aim and I have both the right aim and right preparation, what is missing? The work is quite feasible and is the only thing in our power. Let go of the past. We must only begin. To leave me and you will see. Epictetus, Discourses 2.19. Do you remember in school or early in your life being afraid to try something because you feared you might fail at it? Most teenagers choose to fool around rather than exert themselves. Half-hearted, lazy effort gives them a ready-made excuse. It doesn't matter. I wasn't even trying. As we get older, failure not so inconsequential anymore. What's at stake is not some arbitrary grade or intramural sports trophy, but the quality of your life and your ability to deal with the world around you. Don't let that intimidate you, though. You have the best teachers in the world, the wisest philosophers who ever lived. And not only are you capable, the professor is asking for something very simple. Just begin the work, the rest follows.
pass through this brief patch of time in harmony with nature, and come to your final resting place gracefully, just as a ripened olive might drop, praising the earth that nourished it and grateful to the tree that gave it growth. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations for Point for 8. There are some stunningly beautiful turns of phrase in Marcus's Meditations, a surprising treat considering the intended audience just himself. In one passage, he praises the charm and allure of nature's process, the stalks of ripe grain bending low, the frowning brow of the lion, the foam dripping from the boar's mouth. We should thank private rhetoric teacher Marcus Cornelius Fronto for the imagery in these vivid passages. Fronto, widely considered to be Rome's best orator besides Cicero, was chosen by Marcus's adopted father to teach Marcus to think and write and speak. More than just pretty phrases, they gave him and Nas a powerful perspective on ordinary or seemingly unbeautiful events. It takes an artist's eye to see that the end of life is not unlike a ripe fruit falling from its tree. It takes a poet to notice the way baking bread splits in places, and those cracks, while not intended in the baker's art, catch our eye and serve to stir our appetite and find a metaphor in them. There is clarity and joy in seeing what others can't see, in finding grace and harmony in places others overlook. Isn't that far better than seeing the world as some dark place? Cato practiced the kind of public speech capable of moving the masses. Believing proper political philosophy takes care, like any great city, to maintain the warlike element. But he was never seen practicing in front of others, and no one ever heard him rehearse a speech. When he was told that people blamed him for his silence, he replied, "Better they not blame my life. I began to speak only when I am certain what I'll say isn't better left unsaid." Plutarch, Cato the Younger, 4. It's easy to act, to just dive in. It's harder to stop, to pause, to think. No, I'm not sure I need to do that yet. I'm not sure I am ready. As Cato entered politics, many expected swift and great things from him, stirring speeches, roaring condemnations, wise analyses. He was aware of this pressure that exists on all of us at all times, and resisted. It's easy to pander to the mob and to our ego. Instead, he waited and prepared. He parsed his own thoughts, made sure he was not reacting emotionally, selfishly, ignorantly, or prematurely. Only then would he speak when he was confident that his words were worthy of being heard. To do this requires awareness. It requires us to stop and evaluate ourselves honestly. Can you do that? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. Remember that it's not only the desire for wealth and position that debases and subjugates us, but also the desire for peace, leisure, travel, and learning. It doesn't matter what the external thing is, the value we place on it subjugates us to another ... Where our heart is set, there our impediment lies. Epictetus discourses for point 4. Surely Epictetus isn't saying that peace, leisure, travel, and learning are bad, is he? Thankfully, no. But ceaseless, ardent desire, if not bad in and of itself, is fraught with potential complications. What we desire makes us vulnerable. Whether it's an opportunity to travel the world or to be the president or for 5 minutes of peace and quiet, when we pine for something, when we hope against hope, we set ourselves up for disappointment, because fate can always intervene, and then we'll likely lose our self-control in response. As Diogenes, the famous cynic, once said, it is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. To want nothing makes one invincible because nothing lies outside your control. This doesn't just go for not wanting the easy to criticize things like wealth or fame, the kinds of folly that we see illustrated in some of our most classic plays and fables. That green light that Gatsby strove for can represent seemingly good things too, like love or a noble cause, but it can wreck someone all the same. When it comes to your goals and the things you strive for, ask yourself, am I in control of them or are they in control of me? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Keep in mind that it isn't the one who has it in for you and takes a swipe that harms you, but rather the harm comes from your own belief about the abuse. So when someone arouses your anger, know that it's really your own opinion fueling it. Instead, make it your first response, not to be carried away by such impressions. For with time and distance, self-mastery is more easily achieved. Epictetus, Enchiridion 20. The Stoics remind us that there really is no such thing as an objectively good or bad occurrence. When a billionaire loses $1 million in market fluctuation, it's not the same when you or I lose $1 million. Criticism from your worst enemy is received differently than negative words from a spouse. If someone sends you an angry email, but you never see it, did it actually happen? In other words, these situations require our participation, context, and categorization. In order to bad, our reaction is what actually decides whether harm has occurred. If we feel that we've been wronged and get angry, of course that's how it will seem. If we raise our voice because we feel we're being confronted, naturally a confrontation will ensue. But if we retain control of ourselves, we decide whether to label something good or bad. In fact, if that same event happened to us at different points in our lifetime, we might have very different reactions. So why not choose now to not apply these labels? Why not choose not to react? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
A podium and a prison is each a place, one high and the other low, but in either place your freedom of choice can be maintained if you so wish. Epictetus Discourses 2.6.5. The Stoics all held vastly different stations in life. Some were rich, some were born at the bottom of Rome's rigid hierarchy, some had it easy, and others had it unimaginably hard. This is true for us as well. We all come to philosophy from different backgrounds, and even within our own lives, we experience spots of good fortune and bad fortune. But in all circumstances, adversity or advantage, we really have just one thing we need to do. Focus on what is in our control as opposed to what is not. Right now we might be laid low with struggles, whereas just a few years ago we might have lived high the hog, and in just a few days we might be doing so well that success is actually a burden. One thing will stay constant, our freedom of choice, both in the big picture and small picture. Ultimately, this is clarity. Whoever we are, wherever we are, what matters is our choices. What are they? How will we evaluate them? How will we make the most of them? Those are the questions life asks us, regardless of our station. How will you answer? Your principles can't be extinguished unless you snuff out the thoughts that feed them, for it's continually in your power to reignite new ones. It's possible to start living again, see things as new as you once did. That is how to restart life. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 7.2. Have you had a bad couple of weeks? Have you been drifting away from the principles and beliefs that you hold dear? It's perfectly fine. It happens to all of us, in fact. It probably happened to Marcus. That may be why he scribbled this note to himself. Perhaps he'd been dealing with difficult senators, or having difficulties with his troubled son. Perhaps in these scenarios he lost his temper, became depressed, or stopped checking in with himself. Who wouldn't? But the reminder here is that no matter what happens, no matter how disappointing our behavior has been in the past, the principles themselves remain unchanged. We can return and embrace them at any moment. What happened yesterday, what happened 5 minutes ago, is the past. We can reignite and restart whenever we like. Why not do it right now? Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Let's pass over to the really rich. How often the occasions they look just like the poor. When they travel abroad, they must restrict their baggage, and when haste is necessary, they dismiss their entourage and those who are in the army. How few of their possessions they get to keep. Seneca on Consolation to Helvia 12:1. The author F. Scott Fitzgerald, who often glamorized the lifestyles of the rich and famous in books like The Great Gatsby, opens one of his short stories with the now classic lines, "Let me tell you about the very rich. They are different from you and me." A few years after this story was published, his friend Ernest Hemingway teased Fitzgerald by writing, "Yes, they have more money, That's what Seneca is reminding us. As someone who was one of the richest men in Rome, he knew firsthand that money only marginally changes life. It doesn't solve the problems that people, without it, seem to think it will. In fact, no material possession will. External things can't fix internal issues. We constantly forget this, and it causes us so much confusion and pain, as Hemingway would later write of Fitzgerald. He thought the rich were a special glamorous race, and when he found they weren't, it wrecked him as much as any other thing that wrecked him. Without a change, the same will be true for us. I will keep constant watch over myself, and most usefully, will put each day up for review, for this is what makes us evil, that none of us looks back upon our own lives. We reflect upon only that which we are about to do, and yet our plans for the future descend from the past. Seneca, Moral Letters, 83.2. In a letter to his older brother in Novatus, Seneca describes a beneficial exercise he borrowed from another prominent philosopher. At the end of each day, he would ask himself variations of the following questions: what bad habit did I curb today? How am I better? Were my actions just? How can I improve? At the beginning or end of each day, the Stoic sits down with his journal and reviews what he did, what he thought, what could be improved. It's for this reason that Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is a somewhat inscrutable book. It was for personal clarity, not public benefit. Writing down Stoic exercises was and is also a form of practicing them, just as repeating a prayer or hymn might be. Keep your own journal, whether it's saved on a computer or in a little notebook. Take time to consciously recall the events of the previous day. Be unflinching in your assessments. Notice what contributed to your happiness and what detracted from it. Write down what you'd like to work on or quotes that you like. By making the effort to record such thoughts, you're less likely to forget them. An added bonus: you'll have a running tally to track your progress to. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content.
If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along, so they may abuse you, leaving it disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame in that? Epictetus, Enchiridion 28. Instinctively, we protect our physical selves. We don't let people touch us, push us around, control where we go. But when it comes to the mind, we're less disciplined. We hand it over willingly to social media, to television, to what other people are doing, thinking, or saying. We sit down to work, and the next thing you know, we're browsing the internet. We sit down with our families, but within minutes we have our phones out. We sit down peacefully in a park, but instead of looking inward, we're judging people as they pass by. We don't even know that we're doing this. We don't realize how much waste is in it, how inefficient and distracted it makes us. And what's worse, no one is making this happen. It's totally self-inflicted. To the Stoics, this is an abomination. They know that the world can control our bodies. We can be thrown in jail or be tossed about by the weather. But the mind, that's ours. We must protect it. Maintain control over your mind and perceptions. They'd say it's your most prized possession. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.
Heraclitus called self-deception an awful disease and eyesight a lying sense. Diogenes Laertius, Lives of the Eminent Philosophers 9.7. Self-awareness is the ability to objectively evaluate the self. It's the ability to question our own instincts, patterns, and assumptions. Oasis, self-deception, or arrogant and unchallenged opinion, hard scrutiny. Even our eyes deceive us, requires that we hold all our opinions up. On the one hand, that's alarming. I can't even trust my own senses. Sure, you could think about it that way, or you could take it another way, because our senses are often wrong. Our emotions overly alarm, our projections overly optimistic. We're better off not rushing into conclusions about anything. We can't take a beat with everything we do and become aware of everything that's going on so we can make the right decision. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. Don't return to philosophy as a taskmaster, but as patients seek out relief in a treatment of sore eyes or a dressing for a burn, or from an ointment. Regarding it this way, you'll obey reason without putting it on display and rest easy in its care. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 5.9. The busier we get, the more we work and learn and read. The further we may drift, we get in a rhythm, we're making money, being creative, and we're stimulated and busy. It seems like everything is going well, but we drift further and further from philosophy. Eventually, this neglect will contribute to a problem. The stress builds up, our mind gets cloudy. We forget what's important and result in an injury of some kind when that happens. It's important that we tap the brakes, put aside all the momentum and the moment. Return to the regimen and practices that we know are rooted in clarity, good judgment, good principles, and good health. Stoicism is designed to be medicine for the soul. It relieves us of the vulnerabilities of modern life. It restores us with the vigor we need to thrive in life. Check in with it today and let it do its healing. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. Keep constant guard over your perceptions, for it is no small thing you are protecting, but your respect, trustworthiness, and steadiness, peace of mind, freedom from pain and fear. In a word, your freedom. For what would you sell these things? Epictetus Discourses for .3.6b. The dysfunctional job that stresses you out. A contentious relationship, life in the spotlight, Stoicism, because it helps us manage and think through our emotional reactions, can make these kinds of situations easier to bear. It can help you manage and mitigate the triggers that seem to be so constantly tripped. But here's a question. Why are you subjecting yourself to this? Is this really the environment you were made for? To be provoked by nasty emails and an endless parade of workplace problems? Our adrenal glands can handle only so much before they become exhausted. Shouldn't you preserve them for life and death situations? So yes, use Stoicism to manage these difficulties. But don't forget to ask, is this really the life I want? Every time you get upset, a little bit of life leaves the body. Are these really the things on which you want to spend that priceless resource? Don't be afraid to make a change, a big one. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. Many are harmed by fear itself, and many may have come to their fate while dreading fate. Seneca, Oedipus, 992. Only the paranoid survive. Andy Grove, a former CEO of Intel, famously said, "It might be true, but we also know that the paranoid often destroy themselves quicker and more spectacularly than any enemy." Seneca, with his access and insight into the most powerful elite in Rome, would have seen this dynamic play out quite vividly. Nero, the student whose excesses Seneca tried to curb, killed not only his own mother and wife, but eventually turned on Seneca, his mentor, too. The combination of power, fear, and mania can be deadly. The leader, convinced that he might be betrayed, acts first and betrays others first. Afraid that he's not well liked, he works so hard to get others to like him that it has the opposite effect. Convinced of mismanagement, he micromanages and becomes the source of the mismanagement. And on the things we fear or dread, we blindly inflict on ourselves. The next time you are afraid of some supposedly disastrous outcome, remember that if you don't control your impulses, if you lose your self-control, you may be the very source of the disaster you so fear. It has happened to smarter and more powerful and more successful people. It can happen to us too. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. We have the power to hold no opinion about a thing, and to not let it upset our state of mind, for things have no natural power to shape our judgments. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.52. Here's a funny exercise. Think about all the upsetting things you don't know about, stuff people might have said about you behind your back, mistakes you might have made that never came to your attention, things you dropped or lost without even realizing it. What's your reaction? You don't have one because you don't know about it. In other words, it is possible to hold no opinion about a negative thing. You just need to cultivate that power instead of wielding it accidentally, especially when having an opinion is likely to make us aggravated. Practice the ability of having absolutely no thoughts about something. Act as if you had no idea it ever occurred, or that you've never heard of it before. Let it become irrelevant or non-existent to you. It'll be a lot less powerful this way. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content. Keep this thought handy when you feel a fit of rage coming on. It isn't manly to be enraged. Rather, gentleness and civility are more human, and therefore manlier. A real man doesn't give way to anger and discontent, and such a person has strength, courage, and endurance unlike the angry and complaining. The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 11.18, 5b. Why do athletes talk trash to each other? Why do they deliberately say offensive and nasty things to their competitors when the refs aren't looking to provoke a reaction? Distracting and angering opponents is an easy way to knock them off their game. Try to remember that when you find yourself getting mad, anger is not impressive or tough. It's a mistake. It's weakness, depending on what you're doing. It might even be a trap that someone laid for you. Fans and opponents called boxer Joe Louis the ring robot because he was utterly unemotional. His cold, calm demeanor was far more terrifying than any crazed look or emotional outburst would have been. Strength is the ability to maintain a hold of oneself. It's being the person who never gets mad, who cannot be rattled, because they are in control of their passions rather than controlled by their passions. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content.
When I see an anxious person, I ask myself, what do they want? For if a person wasn't wanting something outside of their own control, why would they be stricken by anxiety? Epictetus Discourses 2.13.1. The anxious father, worried about his children, what does he want? A world that is always safe. A frenzied traveler, what does she want? For the weather to hold and for traffic to pass so she can make her flight. A nervous investor, that the market will turn around and an investment will pay off. All of these scenarios hold the same thing in common. As Epictetus says, it's wanting something outside our control, getting worked up, getting excited, nervously pacing. These intense pain and anxious moments show us at our most futile and servile. Staring at the clock, at the ticker, at the next checkout lane over, at the skyets, as if we all belong to a religious cult that believes the gods of fate will only give us what we want if we sacrifice our peace of mind. Today, when you find yourself getting anxious, ask yourself, why are my insides twisted into knots? Am I in control here, or is my anxiety? And most important, Is my anxiety doing me any good? Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content. Clear your mind and get a hold on yourself, and as when awakened from sleep and realizing it was only a bad dream upsetting you, wake up and see that what's there is just like those dreams. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.31. The author Raymond Chandler was describing most of us when he wrote in a letter to his publisher, "I never looked back, although I had many uneasy periods looking forward." Thomas Jefferson once joked in a letter to John Adams, "How much pain have cost us the evils which have never happened?" And Seneca would put it best, "There is nothing so certain in our fears that's not yet more certain in the fact that most of what we dread comes to nothing." Many of the things that upset us, the Stoics believed, are a product of the imagination, not reality. Like dreams, they are vivid and realistic at the time, thought preposterous once we come out of it. In a dream, we never stop to think and say, "Does this make any sense?" No, we go along with it. The same goes with our flights of anger or fear, or other extreme emotions. Getting upset is like continuing the dream while you're awake. The thing that provoked you wasn't real, but your reaction was, and so from the fake comes real consequences, which is why you need to wake up right now instead of creating a nightmare. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. When children stick their hand down a narrow, putty jar, they can't get their full fist out and start crying. Drop a few treats, and you will get it out. Curb your desire, don't set your heart on so many things, and you will get what you need. Epictetus Discourses 3.9. We can have it all is the mantra of our modern lives. Work, family, purpose, success, leisure time, we want all this at the same time right now to boot. In Greece, the lecture hall Skolin was a leisure center where students contemplated the higher things, the good, true, and beautiful for the purpose of living a better life. It was about prioritization, about questioning the priorities of the outside world. Today, we're too busy getting things, just like kids jamming their hand down a jar of goodies, to do much of this questioning. Don't set your heart on so many things, says Epictetus. Focus, prioritize, train your mind to ask, do I need this thing? What will happen if I do not get it? Can I make do without it? The answers to these questions will help you relax, help you cut out all the needless things that Macao, busy to be balanced setape. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Robbers, perverts, killers, and tyrants gather for your inspection their so-called pleasures. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.34. It's never great to judge other people, but it's worth taking a second to investigate how a life dedicated to indulging every whim actually works out.
The writer in Lamont jokes in Bird by Bird, ever wonder what God thinks of money? Just look at the people he gives it to. The same goes for pleasure. Look at the dictator and his harem filled with plotting, manipulative mistresses. Look how quickly the parting of a young starlet turns to drug addiction and a stalled career. Ask yourself, is that really worth it? Is it really that pleasurable? Consider that when you crave something or contemplate indulging in a harmless vice. Subscribe Stoic Doc for this kind of content.
Above all, keep a close watch on this, that you are never so tied to your former acquaintances and friends that you are pulled down to their level. If you don't, you'll be ruined. You must choose whether to love these friends and remain the same person, or to become a better person at the cost of those friends. If you try to have it both ways, you will neither make progress nor keep what you once had. Epictetus, Discourses 4.2.1, 4 to 5. From good people you'll learn good, but if you mingle with the bad, you'll destroy such soul as you had. Musonius Rufus, quoting Theognis of Megara, Lectures 11.53.21-22. Jim Rohn's widely quoted line is, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." James Altucher advises young writers and entrepreneurs to find their scene, a group of peers who push them to better. Your father might have given you a warning when he saw you spending time with some bad kids. Remember, you become like your friends. One of Goethe's maxims captures it better. Tell me with whom you consort, and I will tell you who you are. Consciously consider whom you allow into your life, not like some snob elitist, but like someone who is trying to cultivate the best life possible. Ask yourself about the people you meet and spend time with. Are they making me better? Do they encourage me to push forward and hold me accountable? Or do they drag me down to their level? Now, with this in mind, ask the most important question. Should I spend more or less time with these folks? The second part of Goethe's quote tells us the stakes of this choice. "If I know how you spend your time," he said, "then I know what might become of you." Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
Whenever you find yourself blaming Providence, turn it around in your mind, and you will see that what has happened is in keeping with reason. Epictetus, Discourses 3.17.1. Part of the reason we fight against the things that happen is that we're so focused on our plan that we forget that there might be a bigger plan we don't know about. Is it not the case that plenty of times something we thought was a disaster turned out to be, with the passage of time, a lucky break? We also forget that we're not the only people who matter, and that our loss might be someone else's gain. This sense of being wronged is a simple awareness problem. We need to remember that all things are guided by reason, but that it is a vast and universal reason that we cannot always see. That the surprise hurricane was the result of a butterfly flapping its wings a hemisphere away, or that misfortune we have experienced is simply the prelude to a pleasant and enviable future. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. What is it then to be properly educated? It is learning to apply our natural preconceptions to the right things according to nature, and beyond that to separate the things that lie within our power from those that don't. Epictetus, Discourses 1.22.9-10a. A degree on a wall means you're educated as much as shoes on your feet mean you're walking. It's a start, but hardly sufficient. Otherwise, how could so many educated people make unreasonable decisions or miss so many obvious things? Partly it's because they forget that they ought to focus only on that which lies within their power to control. A surviving fragment from the philosopher Heraclitus expresses that reality. Many who have learned, from Hesiod the countless names, of gods and monsters, never understand that night and day are one. Just as you can walk plenty well without shoes, you don't need to step into a classroom to understand the basic, fundamental reality of nature and of our proper role in it. Begin with awareness and reflection. Not just once, but every single second of every single day. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content.
What rules your ruling reason? How does your ruling reason manage itself? For that is the key to everything. Whatever else remains, be it in the power of your choice or not, is but a corpse and smoke. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 12.33. The Roman satirist Juvenal is famous for this question. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who watches the watchman? In a way, this is what Marcus is asking himself and what you might ask yourself throughout the day. What influences the ruling reason that guides your life? This means an exploration of subjects like evolutionary biology, psychology, neurology, and even the subconscious, because these deeper forces shape even the most disciplined, rational minds. You can be the most patient person in the world, but as science shows, we make poor decisions on an empty stomach. What good is all that patience? So don't stop at stoicism, but explore the forces that drive and make stoicism possible. Learn what underpins this philosophy you're studying, how the body and mind tick. Understand not only your ruling reason, the watchman, but whoever and whatever rules that too.
Life without a design is erratic. As soon as one is in place, principles become necessary. I think you'll concede that nothing is more shameful than uncertain and wavering conduct and beating a cowardly retreat. This will happen in all our affairs unless we remove the faults that seize and detain our spirits, preventing them from pushing forward and making an all-out effort. Seneca, Moral Letters, 95.46. Have you ever been caught off guard by an unexpected situation? The opposing team comes out strong, establishes an early lead, and you never had time to recover. You walk into a business meeting, are caught off guard, and the whole thing goes poorly. A delicate conversation escalates into a shouting match. You switched majors halfway through college and had to start your coursework over and graduate late. Sound familiar? This is the chaos that ensues from not having a plan. Not because plans are perfect, but because people without plans, like a line of infantrymen without a strong leader, are much more likely to get overwhelmed and fall apart. The Super Bowl winning coach Bill Walsh used to avoid this risk by scripting the beginning of his games. If you want to sleep at night before the game, he said in a lecture on game planning, have your first 25 plays established in your own mind the night before that. You can walk into the stadium and you can start the game without that stress factor. You'll also be able to ignore a couple of early points or a surprise from your opponent. It's irrelevant to you. You already have your marching orders. Don't try to make it up on the fly. Have a plan. The pitfalls of improvisation. Improvisation, while sometimes necessary, is fraught with pitfalls. Imagine a ship without a course, a business without a strategy, or a soldier without orders. The result is often the same: chaos and failure. When we don't have a plan, we are more susceptible to the whims of fate and the pressures of the moment. This lack of preparation can lead to cowardice, as Seneca points out. We retreat not because we lack the ability to succeed, but because we lack the preparation and foresight to face challenges head-on. Historical examples. Throughout history, leaders who have failed to plan have often faced disastrous outcomes. Consider Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Overconfident and underprepared for the harsh winter and vast distances, his army was decimated. On the other hand, meticulous planners like Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great achieved remarkable success through careful strategy and preparation. They understood that having a plan was not just about the immediate battle, but about the entire campaign. Modern applications. In today's fast-paced world, the need for planning is more critical than ever. Businesses that fail to adapt and plan for the future often find themselves outpaced by more agile competitors. Individuals who lack a clear career path may find themselves drifting from job to job without a sense of purpose. Take, for example, the tech industry. Companies like Apple and Google thrive not only because of their innovative products, but also because of their strategic planning. They invest heavily in research and development, anticipate market trends, and continuously refine their long-term strategies. This level of planning allows them to navigate uncertainties and maintain their positions as industry leaders. The psychology of planning. Planning is not just about logistics, it's also about psychology. A well-thought-out plan can reduce anxiety and increase confidence. When you have a plan, you have a roadmap to follow, which can be incredibly reassuring in stressful situations. This is why athletes and performers often rehearse and visualize their actions before the actual event. By doing so, they build muscle memory and mental resilience, making it easier to stay composed under pressure. Steps to effective planning. 1. Set clear goals. Know what you want to achieve. Your goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Smart. 2. Research and gather information. Understand the landscape. Gather all necessary information that could impact your plan. 3. Develop a strategy. Outline the steps you need to take to reach your goals. Consider potential obstacles and how you might overcome them. 4. Create a timeline. Break down your strategy into actionable steps with deadlines. This helps keep you on track and ensures progress. 5. Review and adjust. Regularly review your plan and make adjustments as needed. Flexibility is key to dealing with unforeseen challenges. Personal application. Consider applying these steps to a personal project, such as learning a new skill or starting a side business. By setting clear goals, doing your research, developing a strategy, creating a timeline, and being flexible, you can turn what might seem like a daunting task into a manageable and achievable one. This process not only increases your chances of success, but also builds confidence and resilience. Conclusion. In conclusion, cowardice often stems from a lack of preparation and planning. By taking the time to develop a well-thought-out plan, you can face challenges with confidence and poise. Remember the words of Seneca, "Life without a design is erratic." Don't let your life be erratic. Plan, prepare, and pursue your goals with determination. Whether in business, sports, or personal endeavors, having a plan is your first step towards success. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more of this kind of content. Diogenes of Sinope said, "We sell things of great value for things of very little, and vice versa." Diogenes Laertius, Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, 6.2.35b. The idea of value is one that has perplexed philosophers, economists, and everyday people for centuries. Diogenes of Sinope, a prominent Greek philosopher and one of the founders of Cynicism, provides a succinct critique of our perceptions of value. He suggests that we often exchange things of great intrinsic value for things of superficial worth, and vice versa. This observation is not just an ancient curiosity, but a profound insight into human nature and societal behavior. Consider the modern example of a plume-blanched diamond-encrusted sofa, which can cost close to $200,000. This extravagant piece of furniture represents an extreme example of how wealth and value are often conflated in contemporary society. On the flip side, think about the grim reality that one can hire a person to commit murder for as little as $500. This disturbing fact highlights the disparity in how we value human life compared to material goods. When someone argues that the market determines the value of things, they are implicitly supporting a system that can place a higher price on luxury items than on human life itself. Diogenes' critique goes deeper than just the market's irrationality. It touches on the human tendency to be swayed by societal norms and peer pressure. In ancient Greece, Diogenes lived a life of asceticism, rejecting material wealth and societal expectations to expose the absurdities of social conventions. His lifestyle was a direct challenge to the established values of his time, emphasizing that true worth, axia, is not determined by societal standards, but by the inherent qualities of the objects or actions themselves. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, continued this theme, emphasizing the importance of distinguishing between what is truly valuable and what is not. Epictetus, a former slave who became a prominent Stoic teacher, often spoke about the need to focus on what is within our control and to disregard external possessions and status. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, echoed these sentiments in his personal writings, urging himself to remain indifferent to wealth and fame and to focus on virtue and wisdom. In today's consumer-driven society, it is easy to lose sight of these ancient teachings. We are constantly bombarded with advertisements and social media posts that glorify material wealth and superficial success. The pressure to conform to these standards can be overwhelming, leading many to prioritize the acquisition of luxury goods over more meaningful pursuits. However, the wisdom of Diogenes and the Stoics offers a powerful antidote to this modern malaise. By recognizing that the market's valuation of goods is often irrational and that true worth lies in things that cannot be bought or sold, we can begin to reorient our lives towards more fulfilling and meaningful goals. This reorientation requires a conscious effort to question our assumptions about value and to cultivate an awareness of what truly matters. It involves examining our desires and motivations and asking ourselves whether they are driven by a genuine need or by external pressures. It also means being mindful of the impact of our choices on ourselves and others and striving to align our actions with our values. One practical way to apply this wisdom is to adopt a minimalist approach to consumption. Minimalism is not about depriving oneself of comfort or pleasure, but about being intentional with our purchases and prioritizing quality over quantity. By reducing our reliance on material possessions, we can free up time and energy for more meaningful activities, such as building relationships, pursuing personal growth, and contributing to our communities. Another important aspect of this philosophy is the cultivation of gratitude. When we focus on what we already have and appreciate its value, we are less likely to be swayed by the allure of new and unnecessary acquisitions. Gratitude helps us recognize the abundance in our lives and fosters a sense of contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. Moreover, the teachings of Diogenes and the Stoics remind us of the importance of ethical considerations in our decisions. The market may place a high value on luxury goods, but this does not justify the exploitation of workers or the depletion of natural resources. By being mindful of the ethical implications of our consumption, we can make choices that are aligned with our values and contribute to the greater good. The story of Diogenes and his critique of societal values also serves as a reminder of the power of individual action. While it may seem difficult to challenge the dominant norms and values of society, Diogenes' life demonstrates that one person can make a significant impact by living authentically and speaking truth to power. His legacy continues to inspire those who seek to live a life of integrity and purpose, even in the face of societal pressures. In conclusion, the wisdom of Diogenes of Sinope and the Stoic philosophers offers a timeless critique of our perceptions of value and a powerful reminder of the importance of focusing on what truly matters. By questioning the irrational valuations of the market and prioritizing the intrinsic worth of things, we can lead more meaningful and fulfilling lives. This March 27th reflection invites us to consider the true value of our choices and to strive for a life that is guided by wisdom, virtue, and compassion. Subscribe Stoic Doc for more this kind of content.